Okay, just want to make sure. Yeah. Just trying to optimize my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen? So I've started sharing my screen.
Yes,
Let
we
me know
can
if you can see
Yes.
my screen.
Yes,
I've got an
Yes, we
Excel
can.
sheet open. Okay, great.
yes.
So for data and you're going to be working with data. Everyone works with data. And your level of interaction with data and how well you can analyze data can be very crucial to some roles. So for my role, for instance, the way I can analyze data and how quickly I can analyze data makes a big impact on my role. I'm a finance professional, so I work with data day in, day out. And you find out that in every organization, you are presented with data. And this data is most likely not going to be in the format that you're able to use or that you need at that point in time. So we're going to be looking at various forms of data and how to analyze, how to sort, how to filter, how you can easily get information from the data, because you can have loads of data, but the information you need, how do you actually extract that information from your data? So apologies for people who are on the basic level. This might be a bit advanced, but I would advise that you rewatch the video afterwards. So like you have a data. This is a simple data from, let's assume this is a bike shop. Alford, let's assume is Alford's. And they have this information. So you as a data analyst or as a business analyst, you are given this data. And the main purpose of giving you the data to analyze is because we want to draw out some information from the data. What is this data telling us? This is a company that sells bikes, snowboards. It's like a sports shop. They have different sales people who they would like to maybe pay incentives to for their sales. But before they can pay incentive, they want to know how much sales they've generated. This company has offices, shops in different regions of the country. They want to know what region is doing well. They want to know what products are selling in what region, so that, when you're doing your stock, you know that, okay, in Southwest, snowboard sells more in Southwest. So you know that you give more, you send more snowboard to Southwest. So you need to be able to analyze this data and summarize this data to get all this information out. Please, if you have any questions in between, if you just put it in the chat box, I will be checking intermittently. So the first thing I want to do, I have this data. It's not a lot of data. It's just the row 117. And I don't even know how many salespeople do I have on this data. I cannot go down and start counting one by one. So the first thing we want to do is we want to put a filter on this data. And the easiest way to put a filter on is to select the data. I'm going to make some assumptions that we know how to do some things. So which selection is part of it. I will select the old data all the way down. I'll go to my data here and click on the filter. And filter basically does what it says. I'll undo that and just do that again. So you realize that you have these arrows at the headers, and those are the arrows that you can use to filter your data. If I want to filter by first name, if I click on this arrow, from the first look, because this is not a lot of data, I can see that I have how many sales people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 sales people. And if I click on region, I have 4 regions. If I click on the products, I can see that I have only 3 products. So that is a quick way of seeing what you have on your data. And that's And that works because this is not a lot of data. If we want to summarize this data, the best thing we can use to summarize this data is a pivot table. And what this pivot is doing is basically summarizing the data based on some criteria that you choose yourself. And to apply a pivot table to this data, the first thing we have to do is select our data. And you can always select by, just holding down your left mouse button and just dragging it all the way to what you want to select. If it's a very long data, if it's a continuous data, you don't need to do a selection. It will just select your data for you if you do insert and pivot table. So you can either manually select your data all the way down, or if it's a continuous data and it has headers, you can just do insert pivot table. And when you do insert pivot table, it comes up with this dialog box, like a function box. It already highlights your table, your data for you. So it's highlighted A2, cell A2 to cell G117. And if you look at this data, you'll see that it's highlighted all the data you have. If it has not, you can simply just select the data you want. And then it would ask you where you want to put your pivot table. Do you want it on a new worksheet or an existing worksheet? Because I want us to see everything on one page, I would select existing worksheets. And it would ask you for your location, where do you want to put this pivot table? Let's just put it by the side here. I'll put it by the side here. And okay. So, and then it would create the canvas of a blank canvas for your pivot table, which is what we are seeing here. This is a blank canvas for a pivot table. And then it would ask you to build your report. What do you actually want to see on this pivot table? Let's, for the first thing, let's see how many, in terms of the region, how many regions do we have? And what is the sales per region? It's a very simple, we have this number of regions, this is the total sales per region. So the first thing we need to do is pick the region here and put it on the rows. We want region on the row for what we're doing now. And then our sales, we want it on the values. And easily you can see that the total sale on this data is 645,100. I will just format this so we can see the numbers clearly. And I've got Atlantic, Northwest, Pacific, and Southwest. And who has the highest sale? We can easily see from here who has the highest sale in this on this data. And we can see that it's Southwest. If we want to know sales per salespeople, the total number of sales per salespeople, we can easily change this region. I'll take off region and I'll put first name, and these are my salespeople. And I've got Andrews, Benson, Davis, Gavin, Murray, Park, and Selby. And you can easily see what their sales are. If you want, for instance, you want to see the salespeople in the different regions, we can combine the region and the sales, and then you have the sum of sales. What I like to do with my pivot is I like to format the pivots to make it clearer. If you look at this pivot table, I don't really like the way it's laid out. So I like to change it to a classic pivot table view because it's easier to see and it's easier to move things around. So if you right click on this and go to pivot table options, click on your display and click classic pivot table layouts and OK. Can you see what has happened? Now we have it on 3 columns as against 2 columns that we had before. So I would undo that so that we can see and then redo it. So it's got my region on a column, a first name on another column, and the total. And I have totals of per region. If I want totals per salespeople, for instance, salesperson, if I drag this name, if I move this name to the first column, then it will give me, totals per salesperson. So it's actually really flexible. If, for instance, I want to see how many of the products, what are the products, these salespeople specialize in, what are they selling more? I can always add the product to this pivot table. If I go on the field list, if I add product, for instance, let's add product to columns, for instance, and see what it does. So I have my products. We have 3 products on the column, on the column. And then I've got the salespeople by the side. That's on the rows. If I take off region, so we can see that Andrews is not selling any snowboard, selling skateboard and bike, and Gavin is not selling any skateboard. So you can easily see what is going on. If we want to pay bonus, for instance, maybe the bonus you get on bike is different from what you get on skateboard. It's different to what you get on snowboard. You can easily see and use this to calculate what bonus you need to pay to the different salespeople. But we'll get to that later on. We'll get to calculations later on. This is just to show us how to create a simple pivot table. Let's change it back to, I'm going to add more things to it. So if I put my region back, can you see how I'm dragging? Anytime you need to change what you have on the pivot, you can just easily drag from your headers here to wherever you want to put it. I want to filter by, so I've got a region. I know we put a filter on our table, but you can also put filters, like specific field to filter on your pivot table. So I want to put a filter. Let's filter by region, for instance. I'm just putting region in the filter. And what you have here is you have region here that you can use to filter this data. So this is all region because everything is selected. If I want to look at just Atlantic, for instance, I can click on select multiple items. I'll deselect all and just select Atlantic and OK. And this is just showing me Atlantic. These are the salespeople under Atlantic region, and this is their sale. If I want to see another one, let's see Pacific. You just need to select and unselect. If you need to see 2, you can select 2, Pacific and Southwest, okay. And this is what we have. So you have the flexibility of, dicing it and cutting it the way you want. One other thing to note about pivot table is before you can create a pivot table, you must make sure that your table, your data has headers. I'm going to delete this pivot. So if you notice, we have headings against all the data we have. If I delete this region, for instance, I won't delete it, I'll just move it away. So I don't have any headers here. If you want to create a pivot table using this data, you won't be able to do it because it needs to know what it's going to use to define the data in column G. And without a header there, it won't be able to do it. So if I try and if I select and go to insert, pivot table, existing worksheet, I want it here, and okay. Okay, let's see. Where's my change data source? Okay. Yes, I'm going to select everything. A to G. Okay. Okay. This was what I was waiting for. So you can see that it came up with an error message. I'm going to cancel that and do this again. I'm going to delete that. So if you select your data, insert, pivot table. If you notice that I selected column G when I was selecting my data, but because column G has no header, it has already deselected it for me because it knows that it won't, it cannot create a pivot table without that header. And this is new because I think Excel, it's getting more flexible. So because that does not have an header, it has deselected it. So on my table range, I've only got A to F, and I actually selected A to G. But I want it to select A to G. So I'm going to change this to G just to show you the error message that it will give. Existing and okay. And it's going to come up with this error message that your pivot table field name is not valid. So to create a pivot table, you must have headers against all your data. Otherwise, you can't create the pivots. So sometimes you have like very large data and you don't have headers. It won't let you create a pivot table. So sometimes you might have to put fictional headers just to be able to create a pivot table. So that's one thing to note on pivots. And I'm going to recreate our pivots. Existing pivot table, existing worksheet. Okay. So if we want to know the total number of skateboards that we've sold, how can we create a pivot to show that? Not the total, not the sum of the sales, the number of skateboards that we've actually sold. Can someone help us? How do we do that?
You select products and units.
So I select products.
And the units.
Select units.
And you can.
And then we have it. So we know that skateboard, we've sold 1,971. So it is that simple. If we want to know how many sales people, how many regions this skateboard sold across, what do we do?
We select regions.
We select region. Where do we put the region?
We put it in the filters section.
Okay, if we put it on this filter, how do we know?
You need to put it in the column section.
Yeah, we can put it in columns, we can put it in rows, you know, depending on how you want it to look. There's no like right or wrong way. It all depends on what you want it to look like and how you want to present your data. So we put that on the column on the columns, and we know that. So let's see. Let's try and sort this by. So data. If we sort this data, let's sort A to Z. If we sort A to Z, we can actually sort by how many, you know, in ascending order or descending order. So you can easily see that, you know, snowboard is the least, you sell the least amount of snowboard. And then the next one is bike, and the next one is skateboard. We know in, if you want to know the region where we sell most products, let's put region here. So we can put product before region. I'm going to change the display, pivot table options, display. And then let's sort this A to Z, which is in ascending order. So for snowboard, I sell a lot more snowboard in Southwest than Pacific. So if I'm doing a promotion for snowboard, for instance, I'll probably target more Southwest because I know I have higher sales. Or if you want to like push a product somewhere else that is not selling well, maybe you want to push it where you don't have a lot of sales. So you know that Pacific, you probably need to spend more on advertisement or something. So the main thing is that this shows how you can easily summarize your data in like a few, very, very few clicks. What else can we do? Let's insert a slicer. Let's insert a slicer on this pivot. And what a slicer does is basically a filter. So if we insert, if I go to my pivot table and insert slicer, one thing I failed to mention when we started is there are different versions of Excel. So yours might look a bit different depending on the version of Excel you have. But I think a lot of people are now on the Microsoft 365 that is constantly changing. So you always be on the latest version of Excel. So this is the latest version of Excel. And on different versions, you find your menu or your items in different places, but you basically have, you know, same thing, but some are more advanced than others. The 365 Excel, they've been changing a lot of things, which, you know, I find out every day. It's getting more flexible. There were some things we couldn't do before, but now you can do them, which is really good. So on slicers, the slicer is just basically a filter that you're adding on to your pivots. And you can slice it by different things. So if I do product, for instance, this is my slicer. It's like putting a particular thing, data on filter. So this is my filter. If I select bike only, it's going to show me bike only. So instead of using the traditional filter, you can use this slicer, especially when you have like a presentation. It looks nice when you have a slicer beside your pivot, and you can show different items on your pivot table. That is snowboard. If I select 2, and you select it by holding down your control button and clicking on it. And you can select 3, select 1, select 2. So you can see that it's controlling your pivots. That's a slicer. One other thing you can add to your pivot. Let's take off, to keep it simple, let's take off products, for instance. And we have units here. You can add a pivot chart. You can add a chart to your pivot. So if I go to pivot table, analyze, let's insert pivot chart. Where's pivot chart? Yeah, this is pivot chart. And we're going to go to pivot chart next. So we're going to go to charts next. So if you insert pivot chart, it's just like inserting a chart, which we're going to which you're going to explore on the next one. And you can pick, I'm just going to pick a simple one, a clustered column. And okay. And this is your chart. So if we change our filter, for instance, you can see that it would change. So this is our filter. This filter is controlling the pivot table and it's controlling the chart. So if you have a presentation, for instance, and you have these two together, you can actually click on your slicer to control your charts as well as your pivot table. So you have the numbers and you have the visuals beside it, which is, so it's so simple. It's just click, select whatever you want, and it changes. So that is pivot table. What else do I need to bring to your attention on pivot tables? Is this clear? Can I check if this is clear and everyone can create a pivot table now? We know what a pivot table is used for. And no matter how large your data is, you can create a pivot table. You can summarize it with a pivot table, which is always very good. I know in previous versions of Excel, sometimes you are not able to create a large, if your data is too large, it won't work. But I think I've not seen a data that doesn't work now. It might still be possible that if it's too large, it doesn't work, but I haven't seen it. But I know on previous versions, if it's too large, you can't create a pivot table. Okay, so that's pivot. What else do we need to learn on pivot? So I'm just gonna. And one thing again is if you need to create several pivot tables, once you create one, you don't have to recreate the table. You can just copy the pivot just select the old pivot. If you Control C or copy, you can use your copy button here. If you copy, you can place that pivot. You can place that pivot as many times as you want. So instead of creating your pivot again, once you create one pivot, you can paste it anywhere. And then you have several pivots and it's still pointing to that same data. Because what you have done is you have copied the pivot. So for instance, we want to use this for just products alone. I'll go to my pivot table, analyze, field list. I'm gonna move this. I'm gonna move this out so it doesn't overlap. So we have this. Instead of units, I want to do sales. And so I've got sales, products. Yeah, and because we had a slicer on this one, right? So it's still connected to that slicer. I'm just gonna close the slicer. I'm just gonna delete the slicer. So I have some of sales here. And maybe this is for, so we've got products here, we've got region here. So depending on what you want to do, you can always, copy and paste your pivot. And one thing you can't do is you cannot change the value inside your pivot because it's connected to your data. If you need to change the values on your pivot, you need to change the data, not the pivot. So if you want to type here, for instance, it will tell you can't change part of the pivot. But there's one thing you can, what you can do, you can create calculated fields in your pivots. Let me think. If we want to create calculated field, for instance, let's say, this is the best. Okay. So what I want to know what percentage bike sales is out of the grand total. I can easily say equal to the bike. I want it to be relative. Equal to divided by the total. And I know that the bike percentage is 41% of the total sales. If I drag this down, skateboard is 31% of the total sales, snowboard is 28%. What I can do is I can create this formula inside the pivot. So if I go to the pivot and pivot table analyze, I can go to field and calculated field. And then it would ask me what I want to calculate. The name of my field, I can call it percentage sale. And my formula is, what I want is, I want it to be the product. This is the sales. I need to think about this. I don't think this is going to work. So I'm going to put sales, percentage sales. Sales. No, this is not the best way to do it. If I want to do that, I think I have to use the values here, value field settings. And it has to be show values as, okay, percentage of grand total. So this is what I need to do for that. So I need to show value as percentage of the grand total. If I do okay, and then it gives me the percentage of the grand total, which is what we manually calculated here. For calculated field, if I want to put in a calculated field, I need to be able to pick, pick the items. I need to I need to put a formula to actually replicate what I want to do manually. This data is not the best for the calculated field I was trying to do, but this is a better way to do a percentage. So you can do percentage, and it's simply on your value field settings. You can show your values as a percentage of column total, percentage of row total. So there are different options that you can pick here. Rank smallest to largest. If we rank smallest to largest, for instance, and unit rank smallest to largest, or probably sales, okay? It's non-applicable because I did not select sale. Why is there any? So value field settings, smallest to largest, okay. Let's just say no calculation, okay? I wonder why it's any, but we can check. Sometimes if it doesn't recognize it as a number, so show value. Smallest to largest. Oh, okay. Okay, so it's just put a rank. So it did not actually sort, it just put a rank. And snowboard is number 1. Let's say, I'm just going to undo that. And that's the second, and that's the third. Okay. And if we want to sort, we can easily sort by using these sort buttons here to sort from smallest to largest or largest to smallest. Sometimes when you do your pivot table, sometimes your numbers, if it doesn't recognize it as numbers, instead of defaulting to sum here, it will default to count. And you can always change that by using your field settings and picking the option you want. So you can use, it might be that you want to sum, so you change that to sum. You can use average, max, mean. So there are different options that you can use here for your pivots. I'm just going to cancel that. And I think that is basically it for basic pivots. And, as long as you know how to like pick your data and how you want to present your data, then it's always, it's very easy to do. And one thing to also know about data is about pivots, if your data changes in the background and you refresh, if your data changes here, if you don't refresh your pivot, it will not reflect your new data. So we know our grand total here, this pivot, the sum of units, is connected to this data. And not is, for instance, the total is, let me change it to product so it's easier. Or rather, I can add products here. Field list, I'll just add product to the columns. So that's a product. And so on Southwest, so I've got bike 24 units, just to make sure. So we have Southwest and bike. This is what I expect to change, this 322. So to make a difference, I'm going to add 1,000 to this. So I've added an extra 1,000 units of bike to under Southwest. But you can see that our pivot, even though it's connected to this data, has not changed. The only way your pivot will change is you have to refresh it. If you don't refresh it, then it will be static. So sometimes if you change your data, anytime you change your data, you have to refresh your pivots. Otherwise, it won't pick it up. So this is a pivot that I've not refreshed. To refresh your pivot, if you right click anywhere on the pivot, there's an option to refresh. It's just basically like refreshing like a web page or something. And if I click on refresh, you see that change. Can you see that has changed? Because I added an extra 1,000 to bike. But without refreshing, then you won't pick it up. So sometimes when you're working with a pivot and you don't know if the data behind it has refreshed, has changed, or it's always good to refresh your data, your pivots. And sometimes you might not want to refresh your pivot because you don't want it to pick the new data. So it depends on what you're doing. I think that is pivot tables. Our next exercise would be the second one that I said, which is charts. So we're going to be looking at different types of charts, because when you work with data, at some points, you're going to need to present that data to like an audience. And when you present data in form of charts, it's very visual. And charts are things that you can easily create, to display your data and to help, especially people who don't like numbers, to understand what is going on. And you can see trends. You'll be able to compare just using a chart for some very simple data. I'm going to be going to other practice data, which is the second one. I think I need to Stop sharing, and I will share the other one. Okay. So this is the second spreadsheet I sent. And these are just simple data. It might be your data from your pivot. You already have your pivot summarized, and then you want to present this in form of a chart. The main purpose of a chart is to make your data visual, and you can also, add and make it colorful to actually appeal to your audience or to just pass a message across. There are different types of charts in Excel, and if you need to insert a chart, all you need to do is go to insert, and then you have all your charts here. I'm going to open that up. Yeah. If you select your data first, it won't let me open it without selecting the data. If you select your data, if I select my data, so this is ABC company, similar to what we had before. We have different regions, these are months. And I want to put this in a simple column chart. My data is selected. I don't need to select the totals because I'm using a chart. It will mainly summarize it as well. I'll go to charts. If I go to all charts, I'm gonna put it here. And I want a column chart. If you hover on the chart, you will see what your chart is going to look like. If you hover on the different ones, if I click on it, you see what your chart will look like before you finally select it. If I click on this one, the first one, clustered column. Let's pick clustered column. And okay. This is my column chart. And it's basically showing, it's assigned blue to north, orange to south, east is gray, and yellow is west. You might want to use your company colors for the chart, and you can change the colors of this chart. We never used to be able to change individual colors before. You had to pick a group. The first thing it does is it defaults to a group of colors. So where is the color? Yeah. So this is the first group. This is the default color. If I click on this, it will change that. So you can actually pick the colors that works best for you. If you just want single color, you can pick any of this one. That's the monochromatic ones. I would pick the colorful ones. I'm just gonna, I love this one. Okay. You can give your chart a title. So let's say we want it to be first quarter sales. Company ABC Q1 sales. So you have your chart title. You have your legend here, which you can move to the side if you want. If you want the legend by the side, you can move it to the side. And there are different options here. If you don't want a legend, well, you definitely want a legend. Otherwise, you wouldn't know, what those colors represent. So you definitely want a legend to show what the colors represent. You can have your data labels. So if you look at what I'm doing, I've got axis title. If I click axis title, Then it gives me space to like change the title, to put a title. So this is well, this is clear. This is month, and this is the sales figure. Sales. If, for instance, so this is January South. If I want to like highlight, probably I want to highlight just South. So South is the yellow one. But for January, I want to specially highlight South in January. I want to change this yellow. I want to change it to something else. I want to change the color. Let me change it to, I'll change it to red. Yeah. So I've actually singled out January South, the bar for South in January, and I've changed that to red. It might be that you want to highlight that. We never could do this before in Excel, but now you can actually change individual colors to suit what you want. So you are not stuck with the colors that are there. You can change it. I have a question here. How did your child build in months instead of regions? Oh, the regions are there. So I can change this. So if you want the regions to be at the base instead of, let's change it. So we want let's select our data. Sorry, let me do that again. So I want the region to be the bars instead of the months. If I click on the filter and select data, so I'm going to switch. So what I did was I switched rows and column and okay. And what I have are now my regions. So I've got north, south, east, and west. Did that answer your question? So you can actually switch depending on what you want to do. So it's flexible. It just defaulted to the month at the base. And let's see, let's change this. So we have south here in January, and it still kept our reformatting. I change color here. And what else can we do? So that's a line chart. It's very basic, but it's very simple. So if you just want to show very simple data, you can use a column chart, sorry. A line chart, let's insert a line chart. So let's see. And like a pivot table, we don't have to reinsert our chart. We can also copy the chart and change it. So I'll copy this. I'll paste it here. So we're doing line charts. So, and what I'll do is I'll go to my chart design and change chart type. So I want to change it to line. And let's pick this. Okay. So we've changed it to a line chart. And this is the sales. And the reason why it's easier to copy instead of creating a new one is because we've adapted this, we've put a chart title and everything. So it makes it faster if you just copy and paste. If you want to, do it from scratch, all you need to do is select your data, insert, and there's a shortcut here for a line graph. So you can pick, if you pick this, I'm just gonna put in. I would put it here. But because we created this from scratch, you have to like put your chart title and all the whatnots if you need to do that. So that is another line chart. I'm going to delete this. Is that okay? If we want to do a pie chart is good when you're showing something as a percentage of something. So if we want to do like a pie chart, for instance, you only need, you won't be able to use like the months. So if you use this January, if you want to put January, just January figures on a pie chart, I'll use this. So when you have a total and it's just divided up, pie charts are good to see what percentage, to show percentages actually. And it's very simple. It's also insert. And this is our pie chart. So I would insert a 2D pie chart, which is the simplest form of pie charts. So I've got the pie chart. You can see there are different types of pie charts at the top here, and you can literally just pick the one you want. I think I like the ones with the percentage. Yeah. Let's stick to this one. Okay. So it shows you what percentage it is. And your Canada, you can say is Canada is 6%. You have your legend by the side. And you can also do like a combination chart, like a pie of a pie, where it actually like splits out a particular bit of the pie. If we do bar of a pie, I can copy this. Let me copy this and paste it here. And then what I'll do, I will change, let me change the chart type, chart design, change chart type, and it's gonna be, this is pie of a pie. If I pick this and okay, doesn't seem to like it. Yeah, oh, it's done it. So that's pie of a pie. So what is done is it's picked this bit here and it's projected it out. So if you want to highlight, a particular bit of your pie, you can use that to like just bring it out. On your pie chart, I know that if you want to like split the pie, yeah, I think there are different. It's not color. I was looking for, there's an option to split your pie. Let me see. I think it's format data. Okay. Let's see. There are different formatting tools. I'm looking for the one to split the pie. Okay. For some reason I don't even know where it is anymore. Format data series. Nope. Yeah, pie explosion. I think I found it. So it's under format data series. So you want to split your pie for whatever reason. You can do that. And then I'm just going to reduce that. So for presentation purpose, you might want to do that and just, split your pie. And it looks a bit better depending on what you want to do. So is I think even if you just do that, it will split it. So if you just select it and drag it without looking for the function, it would actually split the pie. I'm gonna undo that. So you can click on it and just split it. And this is me just, taking one out of the pie. So you want to just, if you want to just take one out, make sure when you select it, so if you select the whole pie, then it will split everything. But if, for instance, you just want to take one bit out, if you select that bit, make sure your selection is just that bit. And all you need to do is drag it out. If you drag it out, then you'll see. So you might want to present your data that way. And that is, so this is pie of a pie. There's also bar of a pie that looks like this. If you go to the chart design, and I'm just gonna change chart type. So this is bar of a pie. So bar of pie would give you a bar chart beside your pie chart, let's say. And this is it. That is what it looks like. So it's just different ways of, presenting your data. And then we also have combination data, which you can combine your charts data, like you have a line added to your bar chart or your column chart. So I have this data here, and we're going to make this bit here the line, and this is going to be the column. And the option to pick is the combination data. So if I select this data, this is my data, and this is sales. So I've got the sales income, and I've got the number of homes sold. And if I go to my insert, I would go to, I'm just going to bring it out. It's all charts. And you have this combo here. And on my combo, I want the homes sold. I want it to be the secondary one, which is the line data. So this is what it's going to look like. And okay. So I have a combination of clustered column and line charts. What changes to this? So this is my home sold. Let's see, can we change the color of that? No, doesn't like it. Yeah. Is this clear? The chart? Okay. So are we comfortable with charts and pivots? I think next week, I think that is our time for today. And if you have any questions, please, if you have any questions, can you put them in the chat, please? Or you can, yes, constant practice. Yeah, that's the main thing with Excel. You have to practice. If you don't practice, you won't get it. Gladys, comfortable with chart, but not pivots. If to be comfortable with pivots, honestly, you just have to practice. Just select it and just create your pivot. It's really, I would even say pivot is easier than charts, really. So if you practice, then you'll get it. From Taiwo, is it ideal to use an existing page or create a new page? I think it's always good to create to just put it on a new page. It's because I want to show the data as well as what I'm creating. That is why I have it on the same page. But most of the time, I do tend to use different pages. Then it also depends on your data. If you have a lot of data, then you won't even have space to put your pivots or your chart. So it's always good to create it on a new worksheet. So totally agree with that, Taiwo. Okay, please, before next week, so you have the practice data, please practice with it. That's the only thing with Excel. If you don't practice it, then you won't know it. Just practice it, and the worst that can happen is you will get an error. When you practice, if you don't get it, please, next week I'll go through it, or you can send me a message on Telegram. So practice with the data. So the purpose of that data is for you to practice, and that would help you. That is why I don't have the answers there. Use that data to practice. Thank you.